Prospects for the German economy. Will the euro crisis slow growth? In the interview, the president of the Federation of German Industry, Hans-Peter Keitel.
Mr. Keitel, the German economy is proving very robust, even though the European economy is faltering and some countries are in recession. What are the Germans doing right?
Germany cannot separate itself from the European economy. The German economy is robust and astoundingly successful, but it will slow slightly toward the end of the year, and I don't think it will perform as well next year as this one, simply because our European partners are weakening. Most of our exports go to those countries. We are economically very closely tied to our neighbors. So there will be a negative effect on the German economy.
So are the good times over for the Germans too?
You could say that, but we shouldn't exaggerate or complain. There isn't really anything serious to complain about. It's a small setback, but it's not an economic collapse.
What consequences is the European debt crisis having for the German economy?
The worst consequence at the moment is the uncertainty. Where are we headed? How long is it going to last? What will it all cost? The tangible effects are far fewer. We all know that not just the financial markets, but also industry is looking for reassurance. It's wondering whether the euro will remain stable and whether it has a future. We urgently need to work on providing a sense of security there.
You travel a lot. Can the uncertainty surrounding the situation in Europe also be felt elsewhere? Can it be felt in Asia or Latin America?
I think there's hope that Germany can take on more of the role that Europe always played, driving the economy, being a key global region. There's hope Germany can play a prominent part in restoring that. Of course, there's also fear about what could happen if that doesn't work out, but we're optimistic. We just have to be patient. There are no easy answers, no swift solutions. We need to have faith in the decisions that have been made and partially implemented, the rescue measures and the consolidation, and faith that they will work.
Germany has guaranteed billions in debts. Can the Germans shoulder that?
We knew what we were doing because Germany is a part of Europe. We can't suddenly abandon Europe. It's an act of solidarity, but solidarity also requires a solid basis. That means we have to decide what the limit is. Support always comes with conditions, and financial help with controls. And the conditions are that these countries agree to tackle their budgetary structures and debts to ensure healthier economies and smaller budget deficits.
You talked about the pain barrier. In your opinion, what is the pain barrier for the debts of other nations?
I don't think there's a pain barrier we can measure in hard numbers. We just have to ensure that we don't cover up or talk down the difficulties. That's necessary to ensure the economies in these countries can grow again and that we have economic convergence in the Eurozone. The competitiveness of the individual economies has to be brought into sync. The more quickly and intensively that occurs, the less limits there will be to our support. In fact, we need genuine economic growth to overcome this crisis.
The European Central Bank is playing a significant role in the European debt crisis, and its importance is increasing. Do you view that with an element of concern?
You could say concern because we have to ensure that boundaries aren't overstepped. The European Central Bank's main function is to ensure monetary stability. Inflation is an emotional topic in Germany, which means we are always on the alert when monetary stability is at issue. If the ECB believes it also has the mandate to take measures like the purchase of government bonds on secondary markets, then we have to closely examine the conditions under which that takes place. The same principle must apply here. No support without conditions.
Could the ECB become too powerful?
No, I think all central banks are independent. That makes them powerful, and I hold politically independent institutions in high regard. I don't believe it's a question of redistributing power.
Doesn't political interference already play a significant role within the ECB?
We have to ensure that political interference doesn't happen. The ECB is independent and must stay that way, just like the German Bundesbank.
Is the euro crisis the biggest problem facing the German economy?
It is the biggest problem, but when we look at what affects us every day, then there are others on a similar scale, like the nuclear phase-out, energy prices, energy security. The Eurozone crisis is the biggest threat, the sword of Damocles hanging over us, but hopefully it will never truly strike.
What will the Eurozone look like in 10 years, the same as today?
That's a very difficult question because it involves the architecture of the Eurozone. First of all, I want to say I'm totally convinced we'll have the Euro in 10 years and that the Eurozone will still exist. Many claim that's up for debate. I don't believe that. But I do think the Eurozone will take a different shape.
How? Can you give us an idea?
At the moment, we don't have the chance to constructively consider a state voluntarily leaving under well-thought-out conditions. There could be situations when that's best for all involved. To be clear, I don't think that's an option for Greece now, because we're going through a crisis and we can't talk about an exit. But if it's best for everyone, then the architecture has to provide the possibility for the Eurozone to be decreased in size, as well as enlarged.
When would that be in Greece's case, for example?
I'll use a company to illustrate. A firm would never remove a subsidiary from the entire company because it's not performing well. Instead, it would try to turn the subsidiary around before making a well-informed decision that takes all factors into account. That cannot be done with Greece in the short term.
A company must prepare itself for every eventuality. Are German companies prepared for the breakup of the Eurozone? Do models or scenarios exist?
As I said, I'm totally convinced there will be no breakup of the Eurozone. Being concerned with unrealistic or hypothetical scenarios is not a plan B, it's fortune-telling. I think it makes more sense to deal with various scenarios involving the strength of the euro. That's the real issue, and of course all companies are working on it.
The Federation of German Industry, the BDI, criticizes the operating conditions in Germany, saying they aren't always ideal. What's your main criticism?
The nuclear phase-out provides a concrete example. That was a sudden political turnaround involving a large degree of emotional decision-making. We have now spent a year intensively discussing the nuclear phase-out, and we have gathered a lot of insight. We have to use that insight because we can't allow energy prices to rise in Germany. They've been on the higher end of the scale for a long time.
But economy and ecology don't always have to be mutually exclusive, or do they?
We've shown they don't, but we have to keep a sense of proportion.
You mean that the conditions aren't really suitable for implementing a nuclear phase-out in Germany?
We've switched off nuclear power plants, 8 altogether. That's the only concrete measure that's been taken so far. We haven't agreed on how the development of renewable energy should follow. We act as if everything we agreed earlier is still valid. We have a renewable energy law that will create incredible additional costs because the German government, German politics, and therefore we as consumers are supporting renewable energy far beyond what is necessary and right. We need urgent intervention. Otherwise, the result will be energy prices so high that they threaten Germany's economic competitiveness.
In spite of that, the world is watching Germany and whether we Germans succeed. Is the nuclear phase-out not a huge opportunity for industry to develop new markets and maybe new products?
Let me use an image to describe this. The world can watch us walking a tightrope and performing daring jumps, but there's a constant danger of falling, so the amazement really doesn't interest me. If the world is watching us solve a difficult challenge with strength and elegance, then I say bravo, great job. I can enjoy the applause if we're creating opportunities for the global market. But we have to concentrate on creating something substantial, not performing tricks for the crowd.
What's a realistic time frame to achieve a nuclear phase-out? Are you saying the current one is too short?
We have two things. One is that we've set firm deadlines, 2020, 2030, 2050. That's a relatively long time, depending where you look. But unless we start doing, instead of just discussing, 2020 will be an incredibly tight deadline. We want to meet our targets, so we have to start immediately.
So energy is already far too expensive in Germany.
It's already expensive and will become more expensive if we continue as we are. We can't afford that.
Mr. Keitel, your term as president of the BDI ends this year. Have you achieved what you wanted to?
As the industry representative, I can only represent the interests of industry. We noticed at this year's Day of German Industry that the politicians are listening to what we say. We can't expect everything to be implemented as we want, but I think it's clear that our voice carries weight, and that is what I seek to represent.
Thanks for talking to us.
Danke.